Well, welcome back to Lucid Alchemy. I'm Angel Miller, author of Transcend the Chaos, The Path of the Warrior Mystic, and the Three Stages of Initiatic Spirituality, among other books. And I'm talking with Lua Valentia, the founder of Specula and an author of books on chaos magic.
Hello, hello. Today we're going to talk about the law of assumption, but also how can this law be used against you by spiritual predators, manipulators, and even social climbers. So the law of assumption was one law stated by Neville Goddard, and yes, I do love Neville's work, and I do agree with this law and believe in this law to a certain degree because I think everything has nuance. And I hope Angel and I are going to be able to bring some nuance and context to this law. So what is the law? Was written by Neville Goddard, as I said, and it states that what you assume becomes your reality. So if you assume that you are successful, eventually your internal belief will become an external fact. And eventually things will reach some sort of equilibrium and you will reach what you desire. So how could you apply this in your daily life? First, you identify your desire, what it is, your intent, as every occultist does when we start a ritual, let's say. Then you assume the state. You feel the feeling. You mentally assume that you are going to be able to reach that goal. You live in that feeling. So let's say you are in love with someone, you imagine yourself with that person, you feel that love, you feel that companionship, you live that sensory vividness of your feeling being fulfilled as a real experience, as in the present moment. This could be the gnosis state of a ritual. This could be the cathartic state of a ritual in occultism terms. Then you persist. You still hold this assumption and you ignore the circumstances of your reality. So let's say you can't be with this person yet, or let's say you failed in a business venture, whatever it is your goal, you ignore the circumstances and just focus on persisting until you achieve and manifest what it is that you want. And then you observe and adjust. You pay attention to the assumptions, you pay attention to this external world, how this external world is affecting, reflecting your inner state. Then you adjust your inner state so it reaches the balance again. So the law of assumption is very closely related to the law of balance that we already explained in another video. Now, Angel, from what was said and even the comparison with a ritual, and this law can be used by occultists within rituals framework. What is the first problem here in regard to manipulation?
Well, in a group setting or a teacher-student relationship, I think the problem is that you find gurus or spiritual teachers or heads of lineages or grandmasters of lineages who, are able to manipulate their students by telling them that everything that is happening to them is somehow fated to be and meant to be and part of the initiatic process, and every little thing, whether it's good or bad, is kind of reframed to be this is part of the process. This is destiny. I knew this was going to happen. This is always what happens. So it could be you have a dream about something And then, the spiritual teacher or guide or whatever says, yes, that's exactly what you should be dreaming now. Wow, that's amazing. Or it could be, your life is falling apart, and the spiritual teacher, instead of giving you some practical advice for it not to fall apart, is instead, will instead say something like, well, yes, this is part of the process. You have to, you're going to get through this, and this is part of the undoing of your ego, and the spirituality is really emerging right now. So, whatever happens, good or bad, it just gets reframed as sort of, wow, you're on the path, So, but, obviously beyond that, then of course you do get gurus who are, well, if you want to, for example, check out of the cycle of samsara and not be going through another million incarnations of death and suffering. Maybe we just need to get together in a slightly more intimate way than you were hoping for, and then that way you'll be spiritually elevated. And of course, this is, who wouldn't, if you really believe that, who wouldn't take that option? So, it kind of opens people up to this vulnerability where, everything is, you know, you, everything is kind of assumed to be this sort of magical transformation. And then, of course, they can start pushing their agenda onto you.
Yes, and the problem with that vulnerability is that sometimes they abuse your trust, especially with this abusive behavior sexually that you mentioned. And
Mm.
then instead of taking accountability for what happened and their mistakes, let's say the scout leader leading you, misleading you to a darker place than you were before, instead of honoring what happened, they will reframe it as fate. They will never take the blame, they will never take the responsibility.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, absolutely. And of course, it's not just a sexual abuse. So from what people have told me in confidence over the years, this happens in the occult world a lot more than we would like to think. Of course, it happens, in mainstream religions as well. But from my experience, the most likely thing that a guru or grandmaster of some strange lineage wants, or some initiator, well, mostly what they want is the feeling of status and respect, because they're kind of often trying to increase their own status, which is not that high outside of these lineages. So, in life they might be a failure, but inside the esoteric circle, they are, unquestionable, this sort of hierophant or chief adept or whatever, who has the mysteries and can tell you bits of the mysteries or not tell you the mysteries, up to him. But, and so he is, extraordinarily high. I mean, he's the highest you can get. And of course, mentally, what if he's connected to if he's connected to God or to whatever the absolute mind, then he's absolutely as high as you can ever get. But outside of it, very often, the guru or the grandmaster or the initiator might be kind of a failure, to be honest, very often.
It
And
does happen.
it does, yeah. And so this sort of magical world that one can be initiated into, um, kind of overrides the banality of the individual in a way. The individual usually has, nothing really go or very little going for them. Or, often they're kind of interesting people, but not without the magic, a lot of people would not be particularly interesting. I think that's actually something different to esotericists or occultists or magicians a century ago, or 2 centuries ago, or 3 centuries ago, or more. That, they were kind of fascinating people, even though they might not always have been good people. And Crowley, of course, was definitely an abusive individual, at least at certain points in his life. But take the magic out of Crowley, and he's still a writer, a painter, a poet, an adventurer, a boxer, a mountaineer. I mean, you'd still kind of want to hang out with him a bit and hear some of his stories, wouldn't you? But that's, I think in this day and age, that's, less and less the case.
One example of this recently was with Wizard Liz. She identified herself as a Muslim wizard, which is very interesting because we do know that magic occurs in the more darker versions of Islamism, but regardless of what our personal thoughts are about this religion, she became extremely successful, famous for her teachings about manifestation. And of course, she's extremely beautiful and attracted many suitors. And one of these suitors saw her content, saw that she was highly spiritual, into all the sort of things such as angel numbers, manifestation, mindset, and all of that. And he studied her. He studied her attentively until, let's say, he found her at the airport. And of course, he had certain traits that she already stated that she liked, such as wealth, provider mindset, and all that. But because he knew what she wanted, he played the part until it was the day that he decided, because he had a very fragile ego, and this is something that he said himself, he decided to cheat on her. And mind you, the problem is not that she suffered, because everyone suffers. We are all adults, we are all humans. Even if you are highly spiritual, you have higher forces working for you, sometimes you will suffer because you cannot control everyone around you. The problem is how this whole situation was framed. First of all, she truly believed she manifested him because he checked all the boxes. Of course he did. He made sure of that. Secondly, she kept saying that he was sent by God. Even after the betrayal, she kept saying that. So she was basically, again, using this phrase, everything that happens was meant to be, not seeing that she was betrayed because she didn't see any of the red flags. Well, if someone is waiting for you at the airport, it's a red flag. If this person allegedly didn't know you were there. So she was extremely naive, and instead of saying, no, I was naive, I wasn't seeing the red flags, I wasn't adult enough, she allowed herself to be in the situation and still didn't learn her lesson, still thinks it was something sent by God. And this was actually her worst fear, because she had a very tough relationship with her father in her childhood, and her worst fear would be to become a single mother. I think it's every woman's fear, perhaps, is to become a single mother. Although nowadays some women are choosing this, and other feminists are actually saying, oh, you should do this, it's so much fun to be a mom by yourself. So who knows? But the majority still prefers to have a father helping them or by their side, of course. I think this is problematic because we should take some accountability, and even accountability when it comes to our own naivety, because unfortunately we cannot afford to be this naive. We should know better, especially if we are influencing millions of people, which is her case.
Yes, well, definitely. Yeah, well, that is the curious thing about magic or positive thinking or whatever it may be, that in a way it kind of inculcates a kind of naivety, right? So in magic, of course, one is supposed at a certain point, one is supposed to interpret everything as being a manifestation of one's holy guardian angel. So whatever happens, you interpret it as, well, at least there's some kind of message from this holy guardian angel. But things sometimes just do happen. And, one thing that definitely happens is, predators see that you're naive or see that someone is naive and will take advantage of that. And, this seems to be you know, a case where the person was very calculated in their manipulation. But, we all come across manipulative people who absolutely will take advantage of someone who is naive or thinks that, everything is somehow being delivered to them through the universe. And, you make yourself vulnerable when you do that. I think it's only about 1% of the population, 1 or 2%, 1% is, are psychopaths, but, that's still 1 out of every 100. You walk through the city, you're passing tens of thousands of people, and, criminals or psychopaths are able to pick out people who are naive. They can see it
They
a
are
mile away. Yeah.
by their posture, even. There was a study that they took these very abusive criminals and even serial killers, and they asked, how would you choose your victims? The self-confidence is everything. If you look
Mhm.
like a victim, you will be chosen to be one.
Yeah, I mean, I saw a video years ago of martial artists in Britain. They were asked to watch a video, and the video was of um, an animation of people walking. It was actual real people, but they had sort of mapped onto the people to make them appear as stick figures. So you couldn't tell how tall they were or whether they were male and female. These guys were just watching these stick figures walk around the room. And then they asked them which one of these people would you attack if you were a criminal? And they all picked out the same person. And of course, it was the person they picked out had been mugged several times, and it was they walked with their shoulders down, their head down, very sort of defensively, and they went, well, that's a great victim right there because you can attack them and they're not going to do anything back. But this is just
But
watching stick figures, so they're not even seeing facial expressions or anything like that. So you can pick
imagine
it out at a
adding the
distance.
facial thing.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And and that's criminals on the street for sure, but it's also people who want to take advantage of people in relationships, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever it may be. That's not even anything spiritual. But then, of course, in the spiritual world, you have this. Why do people want to be the head of a lineage, and claim why, my lineage is hundreds of years old and it comes from some duke who was a knight, and it's all terribly secret, and we've got the secrets of the universe. What kind of person wants to make those claims? Maybe they're really, really a spiritual person, or maybe they're a little bit narcissistic as well, and they're going to manipulate you. In most cases, it's probably the latter.
Another thing they use against you is your own beliefs. So let's say you believe in angel numbers. Certain people will call you 1111 to make a point. They'll send an email at that time to make a point. Let's say you believe in astrology. Perhaps they don't, but they will research that so they can talk to you at your own level and use these beliefs as a tool against you. So if you need a sign, ask correctly to your guides and don't just take the first thing that happens to you as a sign. The signs must be consistent. The signs must be undeniable. The signs, you cannot doubt the signs. It can't be just a number or something like that. Of course, if you are truly connected with someone, you're gonna start seeing synchronicities, coincidence, and things are gonna be very overwhelming. You cannot just deny what is happening, but also be aware that people can weaponize your beliefs against you. And some people who are easily persuaded, they need some sort of meaning to their lives. They're going to believe in the first thing they see because they're going to see everything as a sign, and they won't be able, because of how naive they are, they won't be able to separate what is manipulation from the true signs.
Yeah. Yeah, I heard a tattooist talking recently, and he was talking about one client that he refused to tattoo. And he said this guy came into his tattoo shop and said he wanted different numbers tattooed on different parts of his body, it's behind his ear, on his wrist, or whatever. And he said, "Why do you want all these numbers tattooed on your body?" And he said, "Well, I'm going to go to a nightclub or go to nightclubs, often. And then I'm going to ask women, what's your lucky number? And when they say, it's the number three, he's going to say, oh, look, I got it tattooed right here. Or number five, look, I've got it right here. And then it's kismet. And then he's going to take them back to his apartment. I guess they were small, you'd notice when he took his clothes off. But, to think, someone's actually going as far as thinking, I know I'm going to get this tattooed on my body and then I'm going to use that to trick women. It's just incredible. And, it's a stupid idea and they're going to get found out. But, you know, that mindset, a lot of people have that, right? So a lot of people are thinking, well, how can I use this against someone? Or, use this to, I'm not going to be me, I'm going to be someone else, So, not to be controversial or any more
Oh,
controversial than usual, but, it's like Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex, whatever she is, you know, would wear Princess Diana's perfume and some of her clothing that looked like Diana to sort of reel Harry in and make him feel like, wow, this is destiny. And and even Cleopatra did that when she was seducing Mark Antony as well. She would appear as, his goddess and this kind of thing. So, and people will fall for it because they think, wow, this is fated. This is like the gods. And it's not that things aren't fated sometimes, but you know, if your mindset is one of I'm conjuring up these things by imagining it, or I did a magic spell to meet a beautiful woman, and then a beautiful woman came into my life 2 days later, and she's saying all the right things. Maybe that's worked. Maybe it's a coincidence. Maybe this person is completely, sees how naive you are, and they're going to manipulate you. So, I mean, of course, it happens. Men manipulate women. It also happens the other way around, of course. So.
but you told in another video that you like danger, so. But
Well, did I?
I'll give you
Yeah.
one example that happened to me. And mind you, I know a lot about manipulation. I study it. I knew what was happening and I let it just because. So many years ago, when I first came to Australia, I received an ad on Facebook about this Melbourneian photographer who was selecting people for a photography session for free, the whole package and the whole stuff, mind you. So I got selected for this session, and before going there, before arriving at the place, I was listening to an album from a certain singer on Spotify. Mind you, when I arrived there, they were listening to the same album. Coincidence? No. They checked my profile. They started talking about things I have posted or liked on my Facebook page. And then what was free wasn't actually free, because the session itself was free. So there was champagne, there was VIP treatment, free makeup, but then each photo costed almost $300. So it wasn't free. The price was embedded on that photo and with that treatment and everything in the secret package. So I knew the whole time they checked on me, my interests and everything, and they were able to ask questions about the things I just mentioned on my Facebook page. So the whole team really did a great job. And I knew they were manipulating me, but it was a great job. And it was a great sales pitch, because then after the whole thing, they show you your photos on a big screen, and it has popcorn and all that, so it was truly well done, but it was pure manipulation. And I know manipulation. Still,
Yeah.
I let that happen. So I cannot complain that I paid more for photos than I probably should have. Because if I was indeed, choosing a photographer, I wouldn't pay $300 for one photo. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
No, for sure. Yeah, well, this may be slightly tangential, but years ago when I was much more involved with fashion and people in fashion, some friends or whatever, became models, and well, an ex and her sister became models. And the thing about modeling is very glamorous. They'll fly you all over the world, put you up in hotels, but in the contract, in the very fine print, you can't just go to another model agency, and you might not even be able to leave without owing them money, because you're spending, you think you're spending their money, but actually in the fine print, always used to be like this. Maybe it's not like this now, I'm not sure. But in the fine print, it would say, you owe us this money. These are your expenses. If you leave, you have to pay us back. So, you could, go on expensive trips to Japan or wherever, but then you leave and they say, okay, here's a bill for $10,000 you owe us. So, but at the same time, you are living this life of glamour, hotels, uh, getting on planes, going down the catwalk, free clothing sometimes. Maybe not getting, you probably don't get paid money for at least a year, but you're getting free designer clothing. So it seems fantastic, but you don't realize you're racking up this bill.
You become slave.
Of course, that's the whole idea of the contract.
It's the modern
Yeah.
slavery.
Yeah.
Many people fall for this, so
Yeah.
it's very sad. Another way they try to manipulate you is by weaponizing blame. And I know,
Mhm.
listener, what you're thinking. Oh, Lua, you do that all the time. No, nuance and context. These are very important things in life. So how they do this, they say things such as, if you don't manifest abundance enlightenment, it's because you assumed wrongly. And what I say is, if you don't manifest, it's because you're not aligned. The free parts of you, you must do your work. You must do work. I can sit here all day thinking, manifesting, feeling myself inside a mansion. I can even have the money for the mansion, right? But if I don't go there and apply to buy the mansion, go to the auctions for the mansion, whatever it is that it needs to be done, know a little bit about the paperwork. Some people can even manifest the mansion, let's say, and then the contract falls through, and then something happens because they don't know how to proceed with the buying option, or they think it was sent by God, like Wizard List, but in a matter of fact, this mansion was cheap because the contract had something weird with the contract, and the person just wanted to give the problem to someone else, sell the problem to someone else. It happens
Mm.
a lot in real estate. That's why someone thinking, oh no, I'm gonna buy these so cheap, and then they buy the someone else's problem because there's death in the family, siblings are fighting, problems with the justice and all that. So yeah, you many opportunities come to you, but you need to be wise enough to choose what is an opportunity for real, what is a trap for real. And you, as I said, should do the actual work when it comes to manifestation, not accepting the first option that comes your way, not accepting the first contract, not checking the contracts you sign, because this world is full of traps. This is what I'm trying to say. Although you are assuming there are traps. No, it's just the reality of things. So that's why I do not agree with weaponizing blame and saying things that, oh, you assume it wrongly. No, if something went wrong, it's because during that process, you didn't pay enough attention. That said, that said, I am the type of person that I know I'm aligned enough with my higher self, and I know that sometimes my higher self takes things away from me because they know something better is coming. So they don't allow me to be trapped in the lowest first possibilities because they know they have higher knowledge. They know something better is coming my way.
Mm.
That said, I need to take accountability for the times because I wasn't aware enough, or because of whatever, I didn't pay enough attention to the traps, and sometimes I let myself fall to those traps.
Right. So, yeah, your intentions and your imagination and what you're visualizing and what you're expecting has to be aligned with your actual actions, right? So, I mean, if you look at the use of hypnosis, which is sort of similar to positive thinking, and maybe has some points of contact with chaos magic in a certain way. If you think about hypnotism in the use of sports, for example, so Mike Tyson and other athletes, Tiger Woods have used, for example, have used hypnosis to improve their game. Yeah, and Mike Tyson is very, very interesting. Was using it when he was very young, I think from the age of 15, under his coach Custer Mato. And he would have his boxers take them to a hypnotist in New York City, and he would have them lay on the floor and be put into a trance state. He was also practicing astral projection with them as well. But and Tyson said that the boxers would improve a lot after they were hypnotized. Obviously, he was having them visualize, beating the other person, being really effective, faster, whatever, maybe whatever their weakness was, working on that mentally. And, but the idea that you could it's all just mental. No, you have to put in the physical work. So they're training, 12 hours a day as well. And yeah, and I think the thing about positive thinking, visualizing, and, believing that you have a certain future coming, that's all fine, but it has to be either, spurring action or a part of the process of action. And a lot of people use it as an excuse not to act. That, well, I really don't need to be working on my business because I'm visualizing becoming a millionaire and the universe will deliver, and it won't deliver unless you take action. It's not a substitute for action. And a lot of people I think in the spiritual realm, think that somehow it's all just going to manifest if they just visualize it. And, one hears occasionally, or I used to hear people saying that, well, there was I forget what it was, but some kind of sportsman, and that one of them was practicing all the time every day, and then the other guy was just visualizing doing it, and it turns out that he was just as good as the guy who was physically practicing. This is a lie. This is nonsense. It doesn't matter how much you visualize being good at something, you're not going to get good at it unless you practice, because practice is also realizing after, a month or a week or 6 months or 6 years or 20 years that you've been doing something slightly wrong and you adjust, or that there's a better way of doing it. You're never, ever, ever going to do that with visualization because you have the limits of your own mind. So let's say you want to be a brilliant tennis player. You need I mean, I don't play tennis, but you need the physical experience of it, hitting the ball and how the ball feels on the racket and how you need to move. And, these things you're not going to be able to visualize like that and visualize the unexpected things you would never imagine. Well, you can't do that, but when you practice physically, obviously, things that you could never imagine do happen, and that's how you get better. Of course, as a part of the process, you can visualize, getting better, moving faster, being more confident, hitting the ball harder, or whatever it might be. But the visualization, the belief, that has to go with the practice, and the practice should go with the visualization and the belief as well.
I
I
agree.
mean, yeah, I mean, I used to do, kung fu, and people, uh, don't think kung fu is effective. I mean, it depends on the school, quite honestly. Some schools are just going to tell you, okay, you basically just fight, and you end up with all kinds of injuries. But another school is just we can't fight because our techniques are so dangerous they could never be applied, and we're just going to do forms. It's like you will never in a self-defense situation that's never going to work because your brain is going to start to shut down. You need to practice with pressure. But we would do things like lay on a bed of nails and where you have to use your mind, you have to use your body as well, and you have to relax your body or it becomes more painful, but you have to use your mind and your breathing to overcome it. But just the breathing and the mind, okay, that's meditation, and that's fine. That's one thing. And then laying on a bed of nails is another thing. It's really going to hurt if you don't apply that. But when you put the two together, you can lay on a bed of nails with a concrete block on you and overcome the pain. And after a minute, well, after a couple of minutes, you won't feel any pain at all. But people maybe outside of the realm of spirituality, sometimes talk about mind over matter, but mind and matter work together, and you can't just pick one or the other.
I absolutely agree. What you said about is part of the process. That is the key. And I wish more people talked about it. And that's why we started this channel basically talking about the law of balance, the law of equilibrium, and the alignment, because this is the core thing of everything. Your spiritual work, your ritual walk, your manifestation, everything. I agree. And you also said at some point with me that we shouldn't be naive. We should recognize that everything is chaos, and chaos is
Mhm.
needed for
Yeah.
possibilities.
Yes.
Again, we are here practicing chaos magic. And I know nowadays I've seen some occultists being very upset with chaos magic,
Mhm.
especially within this realm of manifestation. Again, I'm pro manifesting. I have many subliminals in my channel and I practice manifestation. But I also practice chaos magic. Chaos magic is the core of my belief. And I really love that you said that chaos is needed for possibilities. Chaos, you said, also means risk. Please, can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah. Well, the alchemists used to say that chaos is kind of the first matter, right? Everything arises out of chaos. But for us in this world, everything is changing all the time, and things are going down and other things are going up. And we tend to think that things are basically staying the same, or maybe they are getting better or going to get better. But it really depends. Now with AI, of course, a very significant percentage of people are going to lose their job, including people who are intelligent, or maybe especially the intelligent. And they're either going to have to pivot very significantly, or they're going to find themselves being dragged down. But, AI or no AI, things are always changing. And we human beings tend to want to believe that things are essentially permanent. You know, I did a reading the other day and got the Tower card, and what struck me, sort of meditating on the Tower card, is that this is not something that happens, periodically. In that we're living in the Tower card. It's always constant destruction, but we refuse to accept that. But people who can see, yes, it's constant destruction, are able to create out of that. It's like the people, the positive thinking people, new thought, whatever we want to call it, to give it its more official name. They in a sense believe that they live in a world of total order. That if they believe in something and they visualize it and they do that for a week or a month or a year, or if it's really big, it will occur. It's like a clockwork universe where the dials are turning and they just sort of have to put the money in the slot and the dials will turn in the right way, and it will spit out the other end what they want. But that's completely false. You can invest your time into something for years on end, and it doesn't work out. It sounds like a simple thing, but if it really worked, that just believing in something would make it happen, that we could never experience surprise or shock, because you only get those when you believe something is going to happen and it doesn't, or you don't believe something is going to happen and it does. And the degree of shock or surprise is, is a reflection of how much you believe it. If you're extremely shocked, you extremely believed it would happen, or you extremely believed it wouldn't happen, and you were proved wrong. And my own experience is that very often, when I believe something is going to happen, I'm proven wrong. And maybe it's like trivial things. A year ago, I remember thinking, oh, I have to give a talk at a particular organization, and there were these two guys. They're there every time, and I can just see them being critical. And then I was, and they're there all the time, so why wouldn't they be? And so I absolutely believe they would be there. I was ready for their complaints or whatever, and they weren't there. So, but positive thinking would say that's impossible because you believed that they would be there, and I absolutely 100% did. But life is chaos. You believe one thing, something else happens. But in this chaos where things are always being in a state of destruction and decay, other things are being built up and can be built because things are sort of falling away, right? Whatever it is, and it's this environment of destruction and creativity and overcoming problems that arise as things are destroyed and other things are created, creating not just new opportunities, but new problems, which, maybe a new opportunity for something else. But in this environment of sort of wild environment, that's how we can manifest things. In a world of total order, you cannot manifest anything. You can't really build anything. All the rules are in place, so you could just follow the rules and be okay, maybe. But in a world of absolute chaos, you can introduce totally random and new things are able to spring up completely unexpectedly. So it's the constant, destruction and creativity that gives you the opportunity to do something new, or we would just be basically in the same position forever.
And
So
completely change your reality.
completely change your reality. That's right. I mean, if it was the case that as new thought thinkers think that, well, we live in a clockwork universe where I put in my mental coin and then I get the toy come out the other end. Well, everybody would be doing that, and everything would be in a kind of stasis, right? We would be in a sense in a class system where the upper classes will forever remain the upper classes and the lower classes will forever remain the lower classes. And there's no sort of movement as there actually is. Most wealthy families are believed to lose their wealth after one generation. Certainly after two generations, they've lost all their wealth. And my experience is that I've met wealthy people. They usually come from a middle class background, sometimes from a lower class background, but I've very rarely met a wealthy people who came from a wealthy background. But I've met people who came from a wealthy background who were, struggling to get by. So things go up and down, the families go up and down, everything goes up and down. It's not this sort of orderly, static universe that people think it is. So we live in chaos and people don't like that. So they invent all these things to tell them that there's some kind of order to it, even if it's an order that's somehow oppressing them, because they would rather think that they live in an orderly universe than a chaotic one where there's no guardrails in a sense.
I rather live in a chaotic universe.
Well, of course, me too, but
And I
we're
also
unusual.
believe that, yes, of course. And I also believe that you can hold to your positive beliefs.
Mhm.
Let's say if you have your toolbox, correct? I rather choose beliefs that are going to empower me, beliefs that are going to make me feel better, right? It's not about ignoring reality or ignoring context. I do believe that circumstances don't matter if you are brave enough to focus and be obsessed with your goal, be aligned with your goal, body, mind, and spirit, and being obsessed by doing the work. So let's say I want this channel to work, so I show up as my best self. I learn more and more about content. I do my best to make this work, and still I hold positive beliefs. So what I do, and we will record a video about luck later, but what I do is I analyze the situation. Let's say you are going to give a talk. So there is a possibility that these people that I don't like are going to be there. So I don't hold to the truth, the ultimate truth that they're gonna be mean to me, but I check the possibility of them being mean to me. So what would I say to you? Use the Neville's techniques wisely. So rehearse the worst case scenario, the medial scenario, and the better scenario. And more of that, see yourself, whatever scenario it is, whatever timeline it is, see yourself as the best version of yourself, regardless of the other. So I cannot control if they're going to be there or not. I cannot control if they're going to be mean or not, but I can control that I'm going to be the best. And if for any reason, even if the reason is not them being mean or whatever, for any reason, I'm not satisfied with that place. I'm not satisfied with being there. And I think I'm not taking any advantage. Let's say I'm not having anything positive from there. I ask myself, do I need to be here? How is this benefiting me in any way? Or am I here just so people mistreat me? Or am I here just to listen to people talk about their problems? Why am I here in this situation? And if I reach the conclusion that is not beneficial for me, for me being better, for my betterment, I ask myself, am I staying here because of social pressure? Because if it is for social pressure, I leave immediately. So I taught myself to leave places. Sometimes it's not because of them, sometimes it's because of me, because I'm not feeling well. I'm not,
Mhm.
I don't have to be anywhere. Life is too short to know what I mean. So I believe you can have both frameworks. And this is actually the genius framework, which is you can tell before something happens, not because you're projecting, not because you are acting from social anxiety, not because there's something wrong with you, but you can tell already something is off. And let me tell you, before a disaster or before something bad happens or before someone betray you, there will be signs, such as if you are at the beach and you see the ocean retreating, that's a sign you should leave because tsunami is coming. Many, many times, the chaotic thing, before it hits you, it can be, not always, but many, many times, if you can read the context from a neutral perspective, neither perspective, you could tell this is happening. For instance, if someone is cheating on you, you could tell by their actions and reactions that something off is happening. So again, I believe in order to work with luck, increase your luck, I have to be prepared for this misfortune. So one tip, for instance, I don't want to project that I'm going to be sick, or lose my income source. But I rather have an insurance. If I get sick and lose their income, I get myself covered. I rather have an emergency fund, not because I think an emergency is going to happen, but it gets me covered in case it does. I
Mm.
rather, when I travel, get insurance for my luggage, not because I want the luggage to be lost, but in case it happens, I'm covered. And I always take my essentials with me with the carry-on.
Yeah.
So
Well, I think what you're highlighting is the weakness of some spiritual systems, so with positive thinking, if or new thought, if you truly believe, well, I'm gonna visualize and believe I'll be wealthy and have a mansion. Like, why would you make a contingency plan? Or if listen to Jiddu Krishnamurti, for example, it's all about, well, be in the moment and you mustn't think about, a minute from now or 20 minutes from now, because then you're not in the moment and you must simply be in the moment all the time, even to the extreme that, if you have a sip of a cup of coffee and you say, oh, this is great coffee. You're not doing it because you've compared the coffee now to coffee you've had in the past, which means you're living in the past, and this is really bad. And you must just simply be in the moment. But how do you get from A to B then? How do you think to yourself, now it's time to, go to that other place, or now it's time to meet that person? You're just, if you're really doing it, you're basically a zombie who can't do anything. I mean, how do you even think to yourself, I should make some food? Because you're not making the food now, that's in the future. So, all of these spiritual systems have these weird limits where you can't really do it. You can't really always be in the now and live in the world. You would just, you know, it would just fade away, obviously. And if you believe if you truly believe that by believing you can shape your reality, or that you will shape your reality because you believe that, well, why would you think maybe a tsunami will hit tomorrow? I need to make a contingency plan for that, right? And and then you get into these little weird ideas where people who really believe in positive thinking think, well, if there are, if someone is suffering in some way, that's because they must have brought that on themselves through their thinking, so they deserve that. And no, actually, life is chaotic and things are always changing, and yeah, you can imagine all you want, and you can even work physically really hard every day towards what you want, but things still happen. We live in this chaos. Unexpected things happen, and yeah, you should make a contingency plan, absolutely. And if you do that, it's probably less likely that something is going to happen because you're the kind of person who plans for these emergencies rather than just being swept away by them when they occur because you believed it could never happen because you believed it couldn't happen. So, yeah,
I do plan a lot. I love planning, but I also don't like dwelling in fear. I
of course.
hate the victimhood mindset and I
Hmm.
hate the fearful mindset.
Hmm.
So I can't with people talking about wars the whole time
Hmm.
unless if you work directly with it or if you are willing to fight or if you know what I mean, if you are obsessed with the end of the world, your world's already ending. But of course,
Yeah.
I'm going to pay attention to what is happening and act accordingly if I can. If a
Hmm.
hurricane's coming, I don't want to be the last person to know about the hurricane. I don't want to be the last person to know that something huge is coming. I want to have time to prepare and save myself and save the others with me. But I don't want to live in this fear mindset that, oh, it's chaos, it's chaos. What's gonna happen now with me? I can't control it. I can't. No, it's more like it's chaos. Yeah,
Yeah.
relax a little bit. And
Yeah.
I think what we're trying to say is, yeah, it is chaos, but we also should empower ourselves, not with naivety, but with alignment, true alignment.
Yeah. Well, yes. I mean, chaos, you know, is a wild horse, and we can either ride it or be trampled by it. We should ride it. So, you know, too many, a lot of people even talking about tsunamis or making contingent plans and people dwelling on war or whatever, not just war, obviously, you meet people and they're incredibly negative about their lives or they're negative about other people and they always see, bad motivations in other people's actions. And, again, that sort of habitual negativity is on one level, maybe they're just not very pleasant people, but on another level, it's also that they feel that they've got the world figured out and it's incredibly orderly. And, every time you see something, you can just know that that's what it is. But life isn't actually like that at all. And these people who think like that, they do get dragged down because, well, first of all, no one wants to be around negativity all the time, but no one wants to be around, well, if you're always approaching the world of today and tomorrow and of 10 years from now, whenever, as it was, last year or the year before, well, you're going to be swept away because things have already changed. Of course, there are these sort of eternal forces and, eternal sort of things that we can do, well, we can't do eternally, but, things that are seemingly always true, these underlying forces that kind of push things on. But yeah, that is true, and we should try to work with that. But as we enter into this chaos, but at the same time, to always think that, well, the sort of temporary things that are here, will always be here. That a culture will always be the same, or a building will always be there, or that, you'll always be able to use this credit card in the same way and it won't change into something else. It's just sort of simply ridiculous, really. Things are always changing. And to always, to be stuck in the past, in temporary things in the past, is going to make your life very difficult in the future.
Yes, that's why we should be able to adapt to chaos, to changes, and to adapt our mindset accordingly, for sure.
Yes, indeed. And, as I've said before, to enter into chaos, you have to have your life in order. But, as I just said, there are these sort of eternal things. And if you look back through, myth and literature of the last several thousand years, certainly there are, qualities that people can embody, and that have always been recommended or desired or promoted or exalted in every culture that will enable you to enter chaos and to transform it to your advantage in some way. So yeah, it's on the one hand, it's true that everything is chaos and temporary, but they are these eternal forces and qualities that are always can always be embodied or should always be embodied when entering into the chaos to transform it into something that we want it to be rather than it transforming us. And negative thinking is one of those things that makes chaos transform us and impress itself upon us when we don't want it to.
Yes, and your book about Chaos Transformed is coming soon.
Transcend the chaos.
Transcend the chaos.
Yeah, my title was Transform the Chaos, but publishers, they love to
Yeah, I
change
know.
titles.
I like both titles, but yours was best.
Thank you, because we want to transform it.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, but just to reiterate that we need to develop the mind and, the positive mind of going forward into the world at the same time that we're actually doing things physically and taking action. So we need, the mind and the action in harmony, not just one or the other.
I agree. So it's
Excellent.
all for today. Thank you for listening to us, watching us. Bye for now. Ciao, ciao.
Yes. Thank you. Bye bye.